Kit Harington on his Game of Thrones journey and life after Jon Snow. The first thing you notice about is the hair. Or, these days, it's in service of his first gig since Thrones wrapped shooting, as thwarted screenwriter Austen in Sam Shepard's American theatre standard True West, which played London's West End from December 4 to February 23. But to Harington, it was a style, and an identity, that could feel at times constricting. Shooting what quick? Thrones is the most Emmy-winning primetime series and HBO's most-watched show ever, one whose international broadcasts have made Jon Snow an icon of rectitude the world over. And it's made Harington, all of which has presented Harington with two sorts of pressure in his career: first, learning to live up to the expectations of fans as the moral center of Thrones, and then, defying those expectations as he sets a path toward becoming something more complicated than simply an icon. I am not real. Before he can be fully post-Thrones, Harington has to get through the airing of the 8th season, six final episodes that promise to set the internet ablaze on Sunday nights this spring. They went balls out. Poplar's decision to greenlight Thrones helped cement HBO's place as TV's most artistically ambitious outlet. As it concludes, with the power to define the prestige network pecking order and the balance sheet impact to necessitate a speedy comeback, Thrones is the most scrutinized show in the world. And Harington is. Jon isn't easy to play. He stands for powerful and resonant ideas, loyalty, doggedness, grit, but he doesn't, moment to moment, get many fun lines. Duty and bombast. Reading reviews, which Harington swore off around season 3, at the moment the show leveled up from garden variety hit to mega smash, hardly helped. He looks at press on. As the series' political chaos grew more urgent, though, Jon's gravity came to feel like what the show had been about all along. He was Emmy-nominated. Criticism on the scale that Game of Thrones elicits would be jarring for any actor. But this was Harington. Kit and I are counterparts in terms of experience, Clark says. We are pretty much Eventually, the two came together to shoot Jon and Daenerys' slow burn season 7 romance. The first scene we had together, Clark admits, we both just started laughing. Why are you looking at me? Harington has, like Clark and those who play his on-screen siblings, come into adulthood in front of a huge audience. And that's been Harington had, by the time of Jon's death and resurrection a year later, been involved with Thrones for 5 years. Fan interaction. The mania was so pitched that network head Poplar recalls then President Obama asking him at a state dinner if Jon was really dead. Mr. President, though all the attention reflected concern for the character Harington had built, it also made for something more than a professional challenge. It wasn't a very. I took off the costume, and it felt like my skin was being peeled away. I was very emotional on his last day of shooting as Jon Snow. The experience, after 5 years of gradually increasing fame, changed Harington's outlook. It's like when the public adulation that comes with playing Jon Snow reaches its high point one Saturday night at the stage door outside the Vaudeville Theatre, where Harington and co-star Johnny Flynn have been portraying the rival Rouse brothers in True West. A tidy cue as Harington describes himself as awkward in English. I am not going on set, Bradley says. He knows the responsibility he has, and he knows that it's up to him whether we get the shot on camera or not. Everybody's working as hard as they can, but if he's not working, the shot will be wasted. He knows the response, which is not to say that Harington's work could have gone on forever. The last season of You Have These in Jokes, and these relationships that thrive for 8 years. That's a long time, but for all the stress of the shoot, saying goodbye is never easy. Harington watched his Thrones also obviated the need to make decisions solely for repute or money. It checked that box. While Harington's early film roles, he admits, were largely chosen on the basis of paydays. I was sort of rabbit in the headlights going, ooh, that looks big and impressive. He's now looking for roles further afield. His most recent, Harington admires the careers of fellow Brits Benedict Cumberbatch and Ben Whishaw, who pair spiky personal work with franchise fare. I don't want to be. One thing he won't do is a series as demanding as Thrones. It would have to be extraordinarily special, and it would have to shoot here in London, he says. I think there's enough, for now, though, there's still a season's worth of attention on John to live through and a performance of True West to get to. Harington's his intense countenance lightens a bit. I felt it got beyond.
Raindrop, drop top, top smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that.